Everyone, welcome to this professional development session brought to you by Homebase. Today we're going to be talking about GoOpenNC, which is our open education repository. I'm going to share my screen here and walk you through a few things. There we go. My name is Corey McNeil, and I am your product manager for Canvas and GoOpenNC at the Department of Public Instruction on the Homebase team with digital teaching and learning. If you want to get the bit.ly for this slide deck, you're welcome to use that and take that with future professional development. As always, please feel free to reach out to us. I'll have my email address at the end. If you can help in any way, just let me know. So thanks for being here, whether you're watching this live or if you are hanging out with the recording. So kind of talking about our why. What is Open Education Resources? What is GoOpenNC? And then we're going to explore into that. Yeah, any closing or Q&A. So our why are OERs important, or why is digital teaching and learning such a critical thing? Well, I think it's important to have some scholarly research to back up why EdTech is important. These are just some recent resources and information there to share with you. I think it's important to have that validation as to why we do. Another great resource for that is our standards. So if you are an educator in a classroom, you're looking at element 4C and the corresponding digital learning competency beneath it. And then if you're an administrator, you're looking at element 2A, which those talk about, it's focusing on curriculum and instruction, which obviously educational technology is a big part of that. So what are OERs, which are open education resources? So you'll hear me refer to it as OER. So OERs are instructional materials that have been licensed by whomever holds that copyright to be retained, reused, revised, remixed, or redistributed. So there can be a lot of different things. You are using OER in your classrooms already, whether you know it or not. This can be full lesson plans, courses, materials, videos, simulations, books. Any of those instructional materials that theoretically could have copyright applied to them are considered OER if they've been allowed to be utilized or you've purchased the rights to it. So what do those definitions mean that we just talked about? So retain, I have the ability to own it. I've control the copyright of that content. So you can download it, you can duplicate it, you can store it, you can manage that content. I can reuse that content. So here again, I'm able to use it in a class, in a study group, a website, and a video. So I can use that content in another way. Revising it, here again, I'm allowed to reuse it, but I'm allowed to make modifications to it. So I can change it up in some way. So translating the context into another language per se, anything like that. Remix, so this is the idea of incorporation of new ideas and content in there. So I think a good remix example is you take a lesson plan and you may not like the exit ticket that it uses. So you incorporate something different. So you've remixed that content by incorporating a different exit strategy. Then redistribution would be then taking that remixed lesson and then sharing it out for others to utilize as well. So giving that copy of that content to a friend, a colleague, etc. So how do I know if content is openly licensed or accessible for me to use? Well, anytime a work is created, it is automatically considered copywritten. So because of copyright law, we have the ability to then list those materials with 4 fair use factors. So some guidelines on there, and I've linked to this here. So this is the US copyright law. So kind of talking about what those things are. So what are some of the things about fair use that kind of fall under that section for us as educators to leverage? And those are the purpose of the work, the nature of the copywritten work, the amount of substance used, and the effect that it potentially has on the market value of the copywritten work. So I think the bottom example, the number 4 reason, is usually where people get in the most trouble, is usually trying to circumvent cost factor for an organization. So, taking a textbook and scanning it into an LMS and, and distributing that digital copy to students as opposed to students purchasing the textbook, the entire work. That's obviously an effect on the potential market or the value of that material. So those are kind of those things to consider and think about, because it is a big factor in the work that we do. So keeping that in mind. So another way that I can know that a material is openly licensed is that we have now in the public domain created these Creative Commons licenses that you can put on there. So even though the copyrights do have term limits, it's about 70 years in the United States. It's different for other countries and other organizations. And the number one thing that you need to consider with that is not necessarily all things just because they're old are inside a public domain. There are entities that work to maintain their copyright over materials and products and resources beyond that 70 years. So just because something is necessarily quote unquote been around doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't still or it falls under that fair use. So that's fall out of public domain. So keep that in mind. But anyways, back to the Creative Commons tags. These are content that's been created and has been tagged for you as a user to look at and know that I have the ability to do something with this content. So you have probably seen these icons before. So if we're looking at those, you can kind of see what these mean. There are 6 different ones. So this one basically says that the user is licensed to redistribute. Basically, this is the most wide open. So basically, this is kind of open for all use. And then it kind of gets more and more restrictive as you see different icons come on here. So basically, I have to give credit to the creator. I can't use it for commercial purposes, and I'm not allowed any derivatives or adaptations of the work. So this is, like I said, that yes, I can use this content, but there are guidelines and parameters that I have to follow. So anytime you see those Creative Commons tags, know that that really applies to that resource. And as we get into Go Open, you'll kind of see where those tags fall. So where do I find OER content? Well, Go Open is one of those places. That's exactly what we're talking about today. And it's a place where you can go and access free content. You can share content. You can remix content. All the things you can do that we talked about. So because it's OER, you have the ability to access that content. So other sites like Flickr, even Google image search is getting to a point where you can search for OER images, stock images that may necessarily be accessible to you to utilize. CK12 is another great OER if you're not familiar with. Those are great places you can go and find that content, and most likely it's going to be tagged with those Creative Commons licenses that we've looked at. So what is GoOpenNC? What was the purpose behind this? Well, we know that every PSU is different, and that means that those PSUs have access to different materials and resources to afford or not necessarily afford products, curriculum, and instructional materials for those teachers. We also know that there are teachers who are creating high quality lesson plans, contents, materials, and resources, and not necessarily don't have an avenue to share them in. So based out of that, we basically decided to develop our own repository. And rather than just having like a big Google Drive for everyone to dump their stuff into, we wanted to have something, a little bit nicer that people can search and share other content and collaborate. So what can I do on the platform? And that basically means you can search for all types of content. It is a, searchable platform just like Google. You can author content, you can curate content, you can remix things that are allowed to, you can collaborate through hubs and groups to connect with the colleagues across the state, and you can participate in some professional development offering. So some terminology that I want to set before we jump into the OER. Groups. So this is essentially a group of people. Think about this as like a distribution group in your email system, basically a way for colleagues with common subject areas or grade levels to collaborate and work with one another. A hub is a larger umbrella that can contain groups and collections. Basically, it falls under a theme or a subject area or a definition of a really, really broad category. So like as a good example would be something like STEM education or STEAM education. That's a really broad topic that can have lots of materials and resources and groups and resources within that. So the way we basically categorize that is we put them in something called a hub, and I'll show what some of those are. And then an alignment tag. This gives you the ability to like essentially hashtag a resource. And it's using that hashtag to group common resources the same way a hashtag kind of trends on social media. And you can look at those similar posts and resources that are under that same tag. So that's kind of why it's called hashtag, GoOpenNC. So those alignment tags give you that ability. And there's a lot more terms and resources about the site, but those are the ones that I think are key and critical for us to have that conversation about prior to jumping in. So if I wanted to explore the site, do I have to necessarily log in to see the content? No. It is a public website that is searchable, so you could take this URL here and go straight to the site and start searching and viewing content. So this is a great way for parents or other stakeholders who may not necessarily have credentials in a PSU to see content as well. Here again, this is another great way that PSUs can leverage GoOpen by sharing their curriculum and resources that their classroom teachers are using to ever increase that, like I said, that transparency for stakeholders. But if I am an educator and I want to go into GoOpen to contribute, how do I access that? Well, that's through NC Ed Cloud. So when I'm over here in the NC Ed Cloud portal, I've just changed it to just look at my bookmarked icons, and you can see here that GoOpenNC is this little gradient green-blue of the state that just says GoOpenNC. And when I click launch, it's just going to log me right in. You can tell that I'm logged in because of my profile is there, and now I'm on the home page. So what does this homepage allow me to do? Of course, right off the bat here in the center of the page, I can perform a search. So I can do a keyword search. I can search by subject area, grade level, or by a specific standard if I wanted to be very specific about that. I can also perform an advanced search if I want to have multiple criteria that I want to examine or look for something specifically. Here's my support tab over here that'll take me over to the support page if I need help or issues with something. If I want to learn more about OERs and GoOpen, which you're kind of already doing by watching this video, you can learn more there. You can connect with groups, other collections, e-text, STEM resources, and that's just the footer down there. But so if I just do a blank search here, I'm going to go in to see there's a bunch of resources here. I can filter them down further. But let's just say I want to look at this first example here of this resource. So I click on the resource and I can see it has an overview. I can see what grade level it applies to. So we kind of categorize that as lower primary, but you could even get more specific to say kindergarten. We say lower primary because, just because it's deemed a kindergarten resource doesn't necessarily wouldn't be applicable to a pre-K student or necessarily a first grader. So we say lower primary for that reason. You can kind of see the time allotment. You can see who provided it. So this has been a resource that's been shared to us by the Hawaii State Department. If it was an individual user, you would see who that person was. And looky there, there's my Creative Commons attribute. So I can say I have to give credit. I can't make commercials or can make commerce off this, and I can share alike. So it kind of tells me what I can and can't do. I can see what standards it's tagged to. So I can see that it has 3 different standards. If it had an endorsement, maybe by a PSU or the Department of Public Instruction, you would see that here. I can see the resource by clicking here, and it's going to take me to another page. I can save it to a folder of resources. So think about this as like use your bookmarks bar. You can save them in any way, shape, or form. If you're the author of this resource, you would have the edit button here. So this gives you the ability to make revisions to lessons over time. I can see how many times it's been viewed, how many times it's been saved, and how many comments it has. So those comments fall down here in this section. It's kind of like everything else you see online. You have to take everything with a grain of salt in what you read and make your own determinations as to what it's worth. But you can leave comments. You can also evaluate a resource. You can kind of see what those criteria are. And there's those alignment tags that I was just talking about. So you can kind of see what some of those tags are. I could flag this resource if there was something that needed to be further reviewed about it by someone in DPI. But like I said, I can just jump right into those resources. When I come back to my search, I can continue to scroll and see all types of content that exist. If I want to explore what hubs are, so like I said, we talked about hubs being a larger group of collections of resources. So a great example is these at-home learning lessons. So this was a partnership with the Department of Public Instruction, PBS, and the Friday Institute to create at-home lessons for teachers and students during the pandemic. And you can kind of see what those lessons are. You can see this video talks about an overview to learn about what they are. And then there's 3 collections. And really the first collection is just the grouping of all of the resources, which you can kind of see all of them here. And you can see there are math and there's literacy lessons. And so this collection takes me into all 99 of those math pre-K through 5th grade lessons. And I can see here when they were uploaded, what they relate to. So, counting cars. So this is a lesson for 3rd grade on math. I can kind of see what standards it's aligned to. I could see how many times it's been viewed. I could see that this is set up for me to remix it. So here again, we're talking about that ability to do that. I have the ability to take this lesson and modify it. So let's say I wanted to include it as a station rotation, and I'm going to add it in as a station rotation for my other lessons. I could simply do that here, remix that, add that content in, and they'll be linked together so you can kind of see how lessons get modified over time, which I think is really cool. Another hub that I think I would like to highlight is, oh, Rethink, it's right here. So these are our blended learning hub. This is through the Department of Public Instruction as well. And so you can kind of see these resources, and these are whole courses that they've created for K-8 instructional content. So we've worked with a grant to have some curriculum writers develop some content for us for all of these areas. So you can see there's a teacher guide for ELA, math, science, social studies, and then there are the courses. There's lots of content here. So although it's a low number of resources, really these are whole courses worth of content. So I don't think there's not a lot there when you're looking at that, because there is. Groups are kind of what I was saying, a way to collaborate. So if I wanted to come in here as so I was a high school science teacher, so I'm going to come in here with a high school science, and I can see here are some key resources that have been added. So these are lessons that relate to all types of different subject area within high school science. I can see if there's any active discussions that I want to participate in, who those members are, so I can add myself as a member, or I can share it with my colleagues to join. There's just recent information and any type of activity that has exists. So I can get specifically in the high school chemistry folder here. So talking about gas laws here, something really cool, maybe a lesson there that pertains to that, or a lab that I could use. So that's kind of the basis of GoOpenNC. If I want to add content, there's always, once I'm signed in, there is this add OER button here. So that gives me two options. If I'm submitting something from the web, that's more than likely something you don't necessarily have created rights to, but maybe something that is OER that you want to have incorporated. So I think the best example that I can give to that is something like an online simulation. So let's say, there's an online simulator talking about those gas laws that we were just talking about with chemistry here. I could put a link to that and share that content, and we could review it to make sure that it is OER compliant. But then if I have a standalone lesson or material that I want to share, that's what this open author. And there's, a couple steps that you follow to submit that content. The biggest advice I can tell people is if you have it in something like your OneDrive or Google Drive, that if you will download that content so that it's either a Word doc or a PDF or whatever it may be, something that's not dependent on it existing in your cloud storage, that makes it sustainable for people going forward, because those accounts may change, you may move PSUs, and so we want to make sure that the resource is accessible to everybody. So having that content shared in a way that's not just in your Google Drive or OneDrive is always helpful. So like I said, that is the basis of OER for GoOpenNC. I'm happy to demonstrate this further in your PSU or work with your teams to share this out in any way, shape, or form. Before I close this out, though, I do want to share about our other professional learning opportunities from the home-based team for 22-23. So if you take this link here, it will take you to the DPI website for home-based, and you'll see that our professional learning opportunities are listed here. So for each one of our products, so Canvas, GoOpenNC, Learning.com, NESIS, PowerSchool, and SchoolNet, you can kind of see our schedule of upcoming or recently past webinars that you can participate in and get that information. So as always, I am happy to help any way, shape, or I can in your PSU. This is my email address and my Twitter handle. Please feel free to reach out to me, and thank you for your time today. Thanks for hanging out with us.